Okay, January the 4th, 2010. A day that will not be forgotten anytime soon as far as wrestling history is concerned. TNA Impact went head to head with WWE Raw for the very first time on Monday night. And I've got to say that, in my opinion, TNA Impact was the better show. I enjoyed it better than Raw. Was Impact perfect? No. Okay? Not by any means. There was some negative things about Monday Night Impact last night. But the overall feel of the show, the glitz and the glamour, knowing that TNA was putting on their very first head-to-head show against Raw, it just felt special. They brought out a lot of surprises last night. Some faces that we haven't seen for a while. Some guys showed up that I didn't expect. I'll get to that in a second. And, it's like all the stars were coming out for TNA last night. And I just really enjoyed it. That was its very first Monday night show. With Raw, to me, it was ho-hum as usual. It was an average show. I wouldn't say it was bad, but it was an average show to me. Even with Bret Hart's return, I didn't think that was enough to make Raw that special. Bret Hart's return to me, it was a bit of a disappointment. I love seeing Bret Hart back. He's one of my favorites, from back in the day. Love seeing him back, but it seemed to me like WWE didn't plan his return properly. They didn't script it out properly. It's like they just threw that together sometime in the last few days or something. Could have been done much better. His segment with Shawn at the beginning of the show was good. Could have been much better though. Segment with Vince McMahon at the end, good. Could have been much better. So, Raw to me was just average. Impact, I definitely thought was better than Raw. So good job, TNA. But like I said, there were some problems last night with Impact. It was not perfect by any means. But, considering that TNA is a young company and they're trying this for the very first time, testing the waters, I'd say TNA Impact did a very good job last night. Now, at the end of the day, Monday Night Raw is going to get the higher rating, of course. They've got a larger audience, obviously. But I thought Impact was the better show. All right, I took some notes here. My notes are all over the place. But let's get started. First of all, let me tell you about the people who showed up last night. Obviously, you had Hulk Hogan, Jeff Hardy. Jeff freaking Hardy returned to TNA last night. And from what I understand, he has signed a contract with TNA. Of course, the situation with Jeff Hardy, he still has some legal problems. But Jeff Hardy is my favorite wrestler. I'm just glad to see him back on television. So you saw Hogan. You had Jeff Hardy, Scott Hall, Six, a.k.a. X-Pac, a.k.a. the 1-2-3 Kid. You had Ric Flair show up last night. Eric Bischoff, Val Venus, the Nasty Boys, Orlando Jordan. Even Orlando Jordan. So we had some surprises last night. So it really felt like the stars were out. You know what I'm saying? It was like watching some Hollywood thing. It had a kind of a surreal feeling, and I really enjoyed that. Now, there were some matches on Impact last night that weren't that good. That's going to be a big complaint for a lot of people. There were some matches that weren't that good, but Impact also had two very good matches. Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles, already a match of the year candidate. The year just started, but that is the match to beat right now. Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles is the match to beat for every other match for the rest of the year and every wrestling promotion right now. Also, the women's tag team title match, Sarita and Taylor Wilde versus Awesome Kong and Hamada. Another very good matches. So those were the two best matches on the card last night. They had a match between Desmond Wolfe and D'Angelo De Niro, and I thought that match should have been better. It should have been longer, number one. It should have been longer. Hell, give me 7 to 10 more minutes for that match. That match should have been longer. I wanted to say that was a good match, but I can't. It was just too short. And D'Angelo De Niro won, the Pope, but, Desmond Wolfe, to me, losing too many matches in TNA right now for my liking. I will say that. All right. Some of the negatives from last night. Okay, let's start with the Steel Asylum match, X Division match. The match was going pretty good for the most part. Not the best match in the world. When I was looking at the screen, I was just thinking red, too red. First of all, the Steel Asylum cage was red, and then the ring ropes were red. So it's like they blended in with each other, and to me that shouldn't happen. The ring rope should have been a different color than the Steel Asylum cage. But maybe that's just me nitpicking. But I just visually I didn't like that. I was talking to Instant Classic G1 last night, and he's right. The camera angles for that match wasn't that great. Homicide came down and he attacked everybody. So the referee threw out the match. So it was a no contest. Very, very bad ending. The first match on a Monday Night Impact, with this revolutionary thing that TNA is trying. Well, not revolutionary, but, their first time on Monday. The first match ends in a no contest. Did not like that at all. Then after Homicide attacked everybody and the match was declared a no contest, Homicide tried climbing out of the Steel Asylum, and it's like he couldn't get out. I don't know if that was a botch or whatever, and some of the other wrestlers started climbing up after him. Then he fell all the way down. Then he tried to leave, through the cage, and it's like something wasn't quite right. So the ending there was a little strange and odd. I mean, even the people in the crowd knew that that was not a good ending at all. They started chanting, "This is bullshit, this is bullshit." So didn't like how that, first match, ended. Then you heard some music playing, and Jeff Hardy showed up in the crowd, and he came out to ringside, and Homicide didn't like this. He attacked Jeff Hardy, then Jeff Hardy fought back, and Jeff Hardy gave him a vicious chair shot to the head, so Jeff Hardy, I marked out like a son of a bitch. Unfortunately, everybody ruined that for me. When I was on Skype, people were telling me that Jeff Hardy is going to show up tonight. Jeff Hardy's going to show up tonight. Then everybody sent me messages in my YouTube inbox with the title of the message, "Jeff Hardy is back in TNA tonight." So, unfortunately, everybody ruined Jeff Hardy's return for me. I would have rather not have known that he was coming back, but whatever. His return could have been handled better. That wasn't the best booked return of all time, not Hernandez, Homicide attacking him, and, it wasn't the best booked return of all time. That could have been much better, but, that cage match, the ending to it wasn't very good at all. Then you had ODB versus Tara for the Knockouts title. This match was way too short. It was over before it even began. Tara lost the title to ODB. ODB got it back, and Tara just won the title at the last pay-per-view. I was a little bit disappointed that her title reign was so short. Another complaint was that there were too many commercials, especially during the first hour. That's when it was most noticeable. Maybe because after that, I started to, once Raw came on, I kind of switched to Raw, then back to Impact, and back and forth, and maybe I didn't really notice the commercials anymore. But, way too many commercials, especially during the first hour. So that's a little bit of complaint. And then there were other matches, there were a couple other matches, and they really weren't that good. So those are the complaints. But the overall feel to the show, I really liked it. Now, let's talk about Hogan. Hogan came out, and Dixie Carter was in the audience, and she was clapping, and it just seemed special, that she was dressed up, and she was clapping, and she was happy with herself. Hogan came out dressed in black, in a variation of the old NWO theme song, the very first NWO theme song. And I was surprised. I thought he was going to come out in red and yellow and, the positive Hulk Hogan music. But he came out to a variation of the NWO theme song. Wasn't the real NWO theme song, but you could listen to it and tell it was a variation to it. A parody of it, if you will. And, so he came out in the black with the skull on his shirt, and he was cutting a promo, and, it was going pretty good, although it wasn't the best Hogan promo of all time. Something seemed a little bit off. And Scott Hall and Six jumped the guardrail, and security was trying to stop them. And Hogan, told security, let him in. And then Scott Hall got on the mic, and he was like, This would be just like the old days, the group back together, and we're gonna party, 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 and we're here just to collect the paycheck. So they were kind of breaking kayfabe there, talking about real life there and what happened in WCW. And Hall said he was just there to party and collect a paycheck, and we could all do that. Hogan said it's not like that anymore. We got to do what's right for TNA, you know. So it was an interesting promo. Hall came down and he kind of sided with not Hall. Kevin Nash came down and he kind of sided with Hall and Six, aka X Pac. And Eric Bischoff came down, eventually sided with Hulk Hogan. They wanted to do the right thing. And, it was a pretty good promo, but something was a little bit off. Hogan didn't quite have it. He didn't quite have it in this promo. That was a little bit disappointing. You got to ask yourself the question, was there a little bit too much nostalgia on both Impact and Raw last night? I mean, you saw a lot of old wrestlers like Hogan. Sting showed up in the rafters. Hogan, Sting, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Ric Flair, Eric Bischoff. Hell, you could even throw in Tara Victoria, even though, she was already there. And also on Raw, you had older guys like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, which were the big story to the two programs. So you got to ask yourself, is WWE and TNA relying too much on these old stars like Bret Hart coming back? Relying on these old guys like Hogan, Nash, and so both companies, you're kind of is a little bit concerned, but not really, because when you look at TNA, you can see that TNA is trying to push the young guys, and if you look at WWE, they're attempting to push the young guys as well. So even though we saw some nostalgia last night with the Bret Hart, with the Hogan, and kind of like an NWO thing, it's still WWE and TNA trying to push the young stars. You can clearly see that. And you had little segments back there, like the Beautiful People were playing strip poker, and Velvet Sky was looking very sexy, and Val Venus was back there doing his thing, and the Nasty Boys tried to enter the building. They came in, they were trying to get in, and there was and the Nasty Boys, Jerry Sands and Brian Knobbs, they didn't look old at all. Maybe it was just the way the camera was on them. They didn't even look old. Of course they are, but did a good job in covering up how old they are, because they looked kind of like they did like 15 years ago there. And you had the whole story with Mick Foley. All night long, Mick Foley was trying to get in the building because he was banned from the building, and I thought that was very entertaining. And at the end, let's talk about Kurt Angle versus AJ Styles very quick. Awesome match. See if you can find a way to watch this match. And after AJ Styles won the match and retained his title, Hulk Hogan came out, and he got on the mic, and Hogan said, AJ Styles and Kurt Angle, those are the two best wrestlers in pro wrestling today. So that was huge for him to do that. Then you cut to Mick Foley outside once again, and he was coming in. Val Venus, I don't know what his name is in TNA, I forgot. Val Venus told him that Hogan is down that way, go down the hall, make a left. And Mick Foley went in the office, and it wasn't Hogan. The chair turned around, it was Eric Bischoff, and Foley and Eric Bischoff got into it. And then Hall, Six, and Kevin Nash attacked Mick Foley. How many times Mick Foley is going to suffer sneak and blindside attacks in his career? And then they were attacking him, then all of a sudden they stopped as Hogan came in. Hogan came in and they just showed his face, and that was it. The show went off. So was Hogan a part of this? Or was he disgusted by what Nash, Hall, and Six were doing? So I really liked Impact. Some of the matches weren't that good. I will admit that, but two very solid matches with Kurt Angle and AJ Styles. Awesome match. You had the women's title match, Sarita Taylor Wilde versus Awesome Kong and Hamada. And that combined with some pretty good nostalgia last night, seeing all the stars, Jeff Hardy's return to TNA and Ric Flair showing up, Hogan and all the guys. I really have to say I enjoyed this show. So TNA gets a thumbs up. Raw was pretty average, a little disappointed with Bret Hart's return. At the end of the show, McMahon pretended to make up with Bret Hart and then kicked him in the groin. Bret Hart recovered pretty quickly from that groin kick. You usually don't get up that quickly after getting kicked in the balls. I'm surprised. He sold it well at first, but got up way too early. at the beginning of the show, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart kayfabe buried the hatchet there. And there you go. And I thought Impact was better. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.